Warm welcome back to the Speed Figures YouTube channel then. Myself, Sam Turner, along with Andy Holding this morning, just going to take you through one or two of the real pivotal races from the Cheltenham Festival 2020. The reasons why we fancied them to run well, the figures that they produced going into the festival, and what they've actually managed to do since, form-wise, looking forward to the 2021 festival, so kicking it forward. So, Andy, welcome. We'll start with the first day. Best race to start is the first race, the Supreme Novices Hurdle, won by Shishkin.
Yeah.
What led you to believe that sort of Shishkin and Abracadabra, who I know we were both quite sweet on at the time, they were the horses to really concentrate on and centre on going into the first day of the festival?
Yeah, I mean, we've obviously done we've done numerous Cheltenham festivals over the years based on our speed figures, and what we have found over the course of time, Sam, is there's usually like a pivotal figure that they needed to have done to give you the confidence they're likely to repeat that again at the Cheltenham Festival. The benchmark is around about a 70. Obviously, we rated horses between 0 to 100, and we found that the very, very top class horses, particularly like your Gold Cup horses, your Champion Chase horses, will run close to an 80 or beyond under championship conditions. The novices slightly slower. Obviously, younger horses, they probably won't go the breakneck pace. So horses that have done in and around the 70 mark or beyond have already proven that coming into the Cheltenham Festival, they're capable of running at the pace that they're likely to encounter come, the second week in March. So Shishkin had done a 69. He was actually fourth on the sheet, but there was a massive sort of element of improvement likely to come from that those time figures, because he basically ran to a very high standard without being exerted. So you could put an additional few figures on top of that. So it was no great surprise to see him high up in the betting, a fancy for a lot of people, and of course to go on and win. Abracadabra actually was the top rated horse, or joint rated top horse. He did absolutely nothing wrong. He just bumped into a horse who outstayed him on the day. But the pair of them were well clear. It looked at an above average race at the time, and the subsequent time figure of the race that we got on the day was a 77, which is above average for that race in question. We normally get 74, 75 for a Supreme Novices historically. So you knew that going into the race, they looked an above average bunch. Coming out of it, based on the time figure and subsequent events this season, that last season's Supreme Novices race was very good. And you've only got to go through it. Shishkin, Abracadabra, Chantry House, Asturian Flange, Allard, Edwardstone, Fiddler on the Roof, Captain Guinness, even a horse that pulled up, Mario de Pale, has won 2 or 3 races subsequently. So that race looked good on paper going into it. It worked out well on the day, and you could follow that form blind, and I think you'd be massively in profit if you had done.
It's a very good point you make there, where you say that Shishkin was fourth on the list. Obviously, we have to try and work out really what he's capable of improving off that figure that he's already achieved, and that's very difficult, isn't it, for some people to, well, how do you ask us to, he's fourth on the list, should we be betting him or shouldn't we be betting him? How do we factor in the improvement that he might be capable of? But I think it's a good point that you make, that Timeform obviously use a small p or a big P depending on how they think a horse, how much potential a horse has got to move forward and improve on what they've actually recorded on the book. But I think with these lightly raced horses, it's a crucial factor, isn't it? We're not talking about seasoned handicappers that have been around the block for 5-6 seasons. We're talking about young horses jumping hurdles for the first year of their career. They are capable of springing forward from, say, a 69 to a 77, which he managed to do there.
Absolutely, Sam. I mean, once we get a body of work of a horse over a course of over the years, you got 3 or 4 years of data, a Chacun Pour Soi or an Altior, that if he's run to an 85 maximum, and virtually every time he turns up, unless it's a really slowly run race, he'll do 81, 82. That's what their capabilities are. But when you've got a novice and they've only had 2 or 3 runs, obviously there's not an element of guesswork, but there's an element of your own personal interpretation of what he's capable of. All we can do as a speed figure, a database, company, is say, well, that's what they've run to on that particular day, and that's the fastest they've run to up to that point. It doesn't mean to say, right, he's going to run to a 69, that's it. you can interpret or make allowances for the fact that he's capable of running a good deal quicker.
Yeah.
So obviously,
given a certain set of circumstances, he's capable of leaving that initial figure behind, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, we'll always endorse trying to go with the ones with the top figure. I mean, because like I say, that they're likely to do that again. Obviously, I think we tipped Abracadabra. He was second in. He'd run to a very, very high standard, and all but for Shishkin, he's beaten the rest hollow. So there was nothing wrong with his performance, we felt, and subsequent events has told us that. But Shishkin improved that sort of 5 or 6 pound that he needed to under those circumstances on the day, which enabled him to slightly outrun his previous figure.
Okay, so kicking this forward then for the middle of March, we've got Shishkin, a warm favourite for the Arkle. Have you seen any frailties in his profile, jumping fences this year?
No, because I mean, you look at what he did in the Supreme. Obviously, he ran to a very high standard, as we say. He ran to a 77, which is well above normal years. I mean, he was only like a length behind Epitante, really, in the champion hurdle. He's carried forward that big number to fences. I think he's actually run to 78 already over fences. So he's actually already improved upon what he's already done. And don't forget as well, he's done it almost in a time trial. He hasn't been tested. Nothing's really pushed him all the way to the line. He's basically picked the running up half a mile out, and he's just had to jump the 3 or 4 fences, get over, and job done. And he's down. So, this lad's capable of going to an 8 and beyond. So we already know that he's capable of almost running to like a champion chase level, i.e. an Alti or a Chacun Pour Soir. Those very good horses in that division.
So is there an argument for saying that he's the best chaser in training at the moment?
Yeah, I think that's an argument you couldn't really quash. I mean, I think let's say in the fantasy world, if Nicky Henderson was to put him in the Arkle, would he be favourite? I would suggest he probably would.
The champion chase.
Champion chase, yeah. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Yeah, if he went into the champion chase, even though Chacun Pour Soir was in there, I think a lot of punters would probably still be on the side of Shishkin, in the belief that he's, like I say, he's capable of hitting the ball out of the park.
Okay, so looking down the list then, obviously Abracadabra got beat ahead. We haven't seen the best of him on winter ground this year, but is he the type of horse that you keep on your radar for the champion hurdle back on better ground in the spring?
Absolutely, Sam. Yeah, and a lot of people were quite keen to write him off after one poor run in the Leopardstown champion hurdle. But as we know, in this game, writing horses off just after one run and writing their obituary is always a dangerous game. A lot of the Golden Elliot horses weren't running probably to their very high standard at Leopardstown over those 4 days. Some did, some didn't. And he was found to have a post-race abnormality, which prevented him from running to his absolute maximum. But, his form against the very best prior to that was good. And we know that in a championship running environment, when they go a big pace, when there's a big field, as we saw in last year's Supreme, he's just as good as anything around. I mean, if you compare his numbers to the likes of Epitante and those that took part in the champion hurdle an hour later, it comes out almost mirror the same.
Yes.
So, granted, it's slightly better ground this year. We don't know what we're going to get, of course, in another 5 6 weeks' time. But if it wasn't absolutely bottomless like it was last year, I wouldn't rule out Abracadabra bouncing back and proving 1 or 2 people wrong.
Me neither, and perhaps just 1 or 2 down the list. I mean, I've sort of got Edwardstone penciled in for possibly a county hurdle, something like that. He looks that type of horse on decent ground, big field. If he can jump away on terms, he could be an interesting one for a race like that, perhaps.
Yeah, my view of Edwardstone is he's just a very talented horse. He's got a great cruising speed. He seems to be at this very moment in time best on a flat track when he's in a smaller field. That's not to decry he's running the Supreme. It was a good one, but he just didn't get home against the very, very best horses when it became a slog. And I think, like I say, he's all about speed. So if it was to dry out, let's say we got a fast ground champion hurdle or good to soft ground champion hurdle, he'd be a factor. But I'm still yet to be convinced of his evidence in the Supreme and the evidence of what we saw him in the Great Wood. Is when it comes to a soft ground slog and it's a stamina test, he's as effective.
Yeah, I think county hurdle myself. I don't think he's up to winning a champion hurdle, but a good ground county hurdle, he could be very interesting off a decent weight.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but he would be ground dependent for me. I wouldn't want to be backing him on heavy ground in a big field when you almost need a 2.5 mile horse to win it, and I don't think he is.
No, he's got a proper spring ground, no doubt about it. Anything else down the list that you want to highlight, or do you want to go straight to the champion hurdle?
Yeah, I think Allart's another one. I mean, he fell the other day, didn't he, at Haydock, which is a bit of a shame, but he looked good at Ascot. He ran to a big figure first time out. I think he's one that's capable of running a big race in one of the festival handicaps, but unfortunately the 2.5 mile handicap is out. But maybe the Marsh, and obviously Envoy Allen going to have a big say about that in his division. But yeah, I think Allart's capable of bouncing back. He's a very good horse in the making.
Okay, let's move on to the champion hurdle then. Won by Epatante from Sharjah, the friendly, underrated Sharjah. Darva Star third, Silios Emery fourth, and one or two horses that perhaps didn't deliver what we thought they were capable of on the day, but the race has worked out pretty well in its own right. The two times were pretty close together, weren't they? We got a 77 on our figures for Shishkin. The Epatante performance was rated a 79. The circuit times were within half a second of each other, so both races look pretty decent form. Epatante, where are you on her at the moment?
Well, she hasn't run anywhere near to the level she has done in the champion hurdle so far. I mean, she went into the festival last year with her top time figure that we gave her, a 68. So she was hard to fancy at the morning price, or the prices she was on the day. She was 2-1 favourite in the end. And she was certainly posable from our perspective. But she went from running 68 to 79. So all of a sudden there's a massive, big jump. So under those circumstances, i.e. a strongly run, big field championship event, she came to the fore. It was inconclusive. Obviously, just what we saw of her at Newcastle first time out. But then when she got tested again in a well-run Kempton race, because Silver Streak took no prisoners, I think that race was again a 77 or 78, she got found out. So there's a little bit of patchy holes in her profile to suggest on her day she's capable of achieving what she achieved last year. But like I say, there's just a little bit of inconsistency either way. And when you're looking at 9-4 again this year, and I think there's been other horses that have come through and proven that she might just be a little bit vulnerable.
Do you think it's mental or physical with her?
Probably a bit of both. I mean, her jumping obviously let her down at Kempton. She made that bad mistake, almost like a Bouvardere mistake at that one in the third last, to suggest, maybe a little bit of a physical problem, maybe a lack of concentration. She's just not the kind of horse I'm absolutely massively in love with it, in the sense that I just don't know what Epatante I'm going to get. I don't forget the year before. I mean, she was under a cloud, arguably, but she ran poorly the year before. So her profile suggests that she's not one that you can absolutely hang your hat on.
Bit patchy at the moment, isn't it? Sharjah, I used to really just peg him down as a good ground, strong travelling type, but he's proved that there's a little bit more weaponry to him in recent times. He's managed to cope with softer ground a little bit better.
Yeah, definitely, Sam. And this is the one horse that, when you download our figures, our clients do on a regular basis, Sharjah is always to the top. He's one of those ones that has done it in the past, and he does it on a fairly regular basis. Give or take the odd run. I think that the Leopardstown run after he won the Irish champion hurdle was a little bit of a blip, which is hard to fathom what happened to him that day.
I can't get that one out of my head, I've got to be honest. That performance.
Yeah, it's hard to forgive him that one, really. Maybe it was just the fact that he put so much effort into his first run that he bounced and he didn't achieve the heights the next time. But we haven't got a faster horse, so we've never awarded a horse a faster time than Sharjah in his division. He's basically been the Pied Piper for about the last 2 or 3 seasons. Given where he was in last year's champion hurdle as well, he had to come from a long, long way back because it was a big field. A lot depends on how many runners there are this year. But let's say there was no more than 10 or 12, he wouldn't be so far back as he was in an unseasonably big number last season. But yeah, he'd be the last horse that any jockey would want behind them going down to the last in the champion hurdle. And again, his last 2 runs at the Cheltenham Festival, which have been pretty good, have both come on heavy ground. And although he does handle it, he's much better, as you say, on genuine spring ground. So yeah, he'd probably be a horse that, based on our numbers anyway, over a period of time, that he would win the champion hurdle under the right conditions.
Okay, brilliant, Andy. That's really good. We've covered those 2 races in depth. We're going to have a look forward at the rest of the week. But just to say that we will be updating these race previews. Andy will be doing some good anti-post bets as we move forward and closer to the festival, as most bookmakers go non-runner, no bet. We'll be back with day 2 very shortly. Thanks for joining us.